how to record with Zoom.
There it
Hopefully
is.
that works.
And okay, so I find that this is weird, but you can see my slides, right?
Yep.
Okay. So that's what we're going to do. And the reason that that's what we're going to do is Eve sent out this a survey and 5 people answered. And of that, people said, let's do seeking internships and full-time jobs and networking. So I decided that that's how I would do this, but the questions can be for anywhere. Okay. So the first thing is that job search is a process. It is not just one thing in applying, right? So I thought I would remind you of that just because it does make it so it seems more holistic. So it's partially self-assessment. It's what are my interests? What are my skills? What do I want to do? What are the kinds of things I like to do? And the intersection of all that is where the jobs that you'll resonate with most are going to be. Then you want to research companies and industries because you can do biomedical engineering in a lot of different ways and even different parts of the spectrum, right? I mean, you can be in the pharma world or you can be in the medical device world, and they're really different parts and different industries and different, maybe even skill sets that you have, right? Sorry, there's noise in my house. Can you hear me? Okay. The networking piece, of course, anyone that knows me knows that it's my answer to everything. So we'll be talking about that, but it is really part of the job and internship search process. So if you think of them as completely separate, then that's not as good as if you think of it as a part of that process. So we're going to talk about resources. We're not going to talk about resume and cover letter writing, but obviously that's a big part because your resume is really helping you get your job. So as an example, today I had an appointment with someone who has an incredibly high GPA, has also already had 2 jobs in one industry. His resume looks like he's all about that. His clubs are there. He's already had 2 internships there. And that's not what he wants to do. He's a senior now and he wants to pivot to a completely different kind of thing. And so the first read of his resume, we'd already worked on it together, and I made basically 3 changes, which is very rare for me. I usually make lots more changes, but I only had little tiny things to say. But in our conversation, what I realized is the resume was great and it wasn't going to get him the job he wanted, right? Because the pivot is so completely different from what he's been doing that this resume was going to be read as he wants this, not he wants this. So what we ended up doing is talking a long time again about a resume because he's going to rewrite the resume for the pivot. So when I show this slide and remind you of that, really you're doing all of your searching for the thing you want to do, and it's going to be targeted. So your cover letter, resume, interviewing, search, self-assessment is all going to be based on what you want to get. That doesn't mean there might not be 2 or 3 things, but then that might be 2 or 3 different networking things, 2 or 3 different resumes, etc. And then interview prep, which I think the Career Center happens to be good at, where you can do mock interviews. We have Big Interview where you can actually videotape yourself doing interviews. So I think that's really using your resources, but it's a different part of resources. And then remembering, and I probably should have written this backwards, follow up, which includes sending thank you notes. I know that there are managers in the world where all it is a checkoff, but not sending them means you don't get the job. You don't want to not get the job because you didn't send a thank you note, because that's a silly reason not to get a job, right? So we'll keep going. So some of the things that will help you focus that search are, what are your goals and priorities? So for some people, and there's nothing wrong with that, the most important part of the job search is that they want to be in a certain state. I want to be in Colorado, and therefore I'll do any biomedical job I can get if I can get to move back to Colorado, is a very different search than I want to be a medical device engineer. I don't care where it is, but I'd like to be talking, I'd like the devices to be helping people with mobility issues. That's a very specific search, but it might take you to Maine or to Iowa, right? Because you're willing to, as long as you're working on mobility stuff, you're happy to be there. And then the other thing is, where do you envision your career going? So are you taking a job that's going to get you to figure out what you want for grad school, and you know you're going to grad school in 2 years? Or are you looking for a big company where you can stay for 21 years because you can keep changing jobs, like I did with my job at Analog, right? I had 5 different jobs in those 21 years, but all in one company. So what do you think it's going to look like? And then as part of the job search, you can, I like my little slide, but you can target a list of employers and positions, because when you target them, what it means is if you found the perfect job at the perfect company, what that allows you to do is, who else does these things? So now you're able to say, okay, I figured out I want to work on mobility issues, and here's this mobile BME company X. Now you can go and find all their competitors, because if mobile BME company X has this perfect job, so probably will their competitors. So now that's a way to build out a list. So you're sort of targeting a company for a reason, and then you're making the list longer. What that allows you to do is, it allows you to go to Handshake and say, here are the keywords that I care about, show me all those jobs. It allows you to save a search for all BME jobs in Colorado. Whatever the thing you're targeting is, you can now do a save search on Handshake, and I can show you that later, so that you're getting emails every time something like that shows up in Handshake. But you can also go to your company list and go to the top 10 of them and say, I'm going to do a job search, a save search on each of their websites, so that they email me if something like this shows up at their company, right? So just sort of knowing what your list is means you can double count. You can also use that list as to who you want to network with. So you knew I was going to talk about networking, but I'm going to put networking plugs in all the way through, including all of you. And I'm hoping that the BME Society will get your people to go. Is, you know, that we have our networking night on February 17th this year. It is the start of E-Week, or actually, because it's the start of E-Week, they're now calling it E-Week Plus, because it's actually more than a week. But there are already 140 people, alums, signed up to come to this event. So they will be on Zoom, and they will be in rooms. So biomedical engineers could be in the room labeled biomedical engineering. They could be in the room that says engineers not doing engineering anymore, or they might be in a room of pharma, or for all I know, they could be in the aerospace room too. But they can be in any room they choose to be in, and you will have, by registering, please register, you'll get a list of all the alums who have registered and which room they've chosen, so you'll know how to find them when you come. So again, based on the target list, if 4 people are from your list, even if, and no one's going to be from finance necessarily at this thing, but if you wanted to work for Takeda and the marketing person at Takeda happens to be coming to the networking night, you'd still want to talk to them, right? Because they're on your target list. So you're going to find as many people as you can to talk to on that list. By the way, they're also coming to the career fair. So you've all done what you're supposed to do about the career fair. Remember, registration is open, and you want to select slots for any company you're interested in. So that can happen now, even though the fair is next Friday. Okay. The second point here on this slide, and I'm sorry that I spent a lot of time on this slide not reading my bullets, but the job description might be another way to go about it. You name all the skills you're interested in using and the types of things you want to do, and you literally go to somewhere huge like LinkedIn and just read job description. Because what often is true when I talk to students is they only know a couple of kinds of engineers. They know design engineering and they might know test engineering, but they might not know anything about quality or process or marketing engineers or sales engineers or product engineers or apps engineers, right? So when you read those descriptions and all of a sudden you realize that an apps engineer is exactly what you want to do. I think I might have been an apps engineer if I were an engineer. An apps engineer is sort of between design and marketing. So you're working directly with the customer about why your whatever doesn't work in their thing the way they thought it would, right? And you're writing and you're doing customer phone calls and you're building things to figure out how else something could be used. So you've got a prosthesis for the knee that you think that's all it can do, but the apps engineer would be the one that realized if you just shrunk it, it works for the elbow too. It's cool stuff, but maybe you never even knew that existed. So reading job descriptions, now you have more titles, more possibilities of things you might like to be able to do. I think after I finish my slides, I'll go and do the resources, but Handshake is where all the jobs that come into us are where they are. And companies post them there if they want a Tufts student, right? So they can choose all the companies that have that particular platform and decide where they want them posted. So it is the most Tufty thing that we have, except for things that come directly to your professors, where hopefully they're sending them out, or the things that I get that someone doesn't want to put on Handshake, and I ask you guys to distribute it to the BMEs, right? LinkedIn is useful both for networking, and we'll see that, but LinkedIn jobs work. The difference between that and applying to a Handshake is that LinkedIn is public, and for each job, they get many, many more applications than someone that's posting just to Handshake. So you're more likely to be in the noise. There will be more jobs out there, but you're more likely to be in a bigger group of people applying. The Herd, I'm fond of asking people if they've heard of the Herd. The Herd is our Flash mentoring platform. So it's not really a jobs platform, job searching platform, but it's a great networking platform because every alum on the Herd has signed up to be in the Herd to be helpful to students. But there you can actually find people that were in the Biomedical Society. You can find someone who was in NSBE. You could find someone who has worked with prosthetics potentially. And the system can match you, or you can find a person that you want to talk to and message them directly within the Herd. So it's a really good thing. On our website now, I don't know if you know, we're now arranged in communities. My community, and I can show you that when we go to the web, my community is engineering, tech, and physical sciences. But under the engineering tab, I have all these resources for engineers in general, and then some specific to biomed engineering. So some of those are Biomedical Engineering Society. I know that's what you are, but the professional group actually has job postings. The Mass Biotechnology Council does too. Mass Life Sciences, if you're looking for internships, Mass Life Sciences Internship Challenge is a one resume, one cover letter situation where now you're being looked at as being in a database, and smaller companies are being paid by Massachusetts to pay internships. It's a great resource. Lots of people have gotten their internships that way. I believe a lot of the REUs have already, their application deadlines are done, but I didn't know who would be in the audience. And so if there were a couple of freshmen and sophomores, I wanted to make sure they knew that next year they could apply to REUs early in the winter and end up doing research for, I think a lot of them were paying $5,000 or $6,000 this summer, plus housing, which is a good thing. And then there's also biospace and mass bio are also great places to look for companies and possibilities. So that is not because I think those are all of them, but because I think they are some of them. Okay, so this slide is an old slide. You can tell it's not even in my same way of doing things, but I could not figure out how to move it. But in my mind, an effective job search is learning, research, application, and then a big part of it is knowing the right attitude or using the right attitude and using the right etiquette. And what sits in the middle, surprise, 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 is networking, which allows me to make sure that I transition to where I'm going, which is to remind you that networking truly is the key. This is the sign in my office, the biggest sign in my office, because it is, one of my colleagues actually calls it my catchphrase, which what I realized is I think it's sort of cool if I have a catchphrase. That would be sort of interesting. I don't know that everyone does, but I would say that it is my best college career advice. My best experienced career advice is go to, not from. So if you're going to change jobs later in your career, I'll tell you my best advice then is always go to something that you're going because it's a good thing rather than leaving a bad thing. The only caveats to that are if you're somewhere where it's illegal or immoral, you can leave that. But otherwise, you should always go to something. And that causes you to do all the research we just talked about. What do you want? What are you trying to get to? Where are you, what do you want to learn? What's important to you? And so you go back and you reiterate all those things that we were just talking about. Okay, so we know we've moved to the networking portion of our 17 slides. Oops, we didn't move so fast. So really what networking is, and normally now, except that there's only 4 of you and I don't see any point in it, I would ask you what you think it is. But really, networking is just the process of giving and getting useful information. In the career world, it's on a career topic, right? But it's always about advice. So you network every single day of your life. If you're going to, if Miles and Eves are going to go ask someone where to get their hair done, they would ask 2 different people because they're going to ask someone knowledgeable about that area, right? You're going to find someone who knows more than you do about a thing, and you're going to ask them for advice. Career-wise, it's exactly that, right? You might be asking someone what it's like to be a process engineer, or you might be asking someone how they got their first job. But it's always that process of getting useful information. It is a two-way street. And I think that when I say that, that's the real reason people are worried about networking, is students don't like to bother anyone. They're afraid that they're bothering people. I can't ask this senior person to talk to me about this because he's got more important things to do. 2 things about that. I do want your networking to be two-way. So if anyone else asks you, and it doesn't have to even be the same person, right? In theory, I'm not a spiritual person, but if you ask and expect someone to answer you in the world, you want to be able to say, I may not help this person, but the next person that asks me for help, I'll help, right? That seems reasonable. But the other thing is that people like to give advice. I took a half a cut and pay. I mean, I cut my salary in half and doubled my commute in order to take this job. And the whole reason is I like to give advice, right? So when you think about it, people like to give advice and they don't have to say yes. So in most of the ways that we'll show you how to network, if someone ignores you or says, I don't have time, then they're not doing it. But if they say yes, then they've chosen to network and answer your questions. So really, as long as you're respectful, and I think you've heard me talk about being peppy. Peppy is professional, enthusiastic, polite, prepared, and new. As long as you're peppy when you're networking, you're never going to get someone to say, you know, that Tufts kid, I can't believe she did that. What you're going to have them say is, you know, I'm sorry, I can't help you, or I'm really busy this month. Can you call me next month? Or they're going to ignore you. But once they say yes, you should feel absolutely okay about that. So why networking is pretty obvious, but basically what we want you to know is it's not always to get the job. So most students would like me to send them to a place where I network with this person and they get me the job. It doesn't really work that way, but it's a great way to find out about career fields, employers, classes to take, whether it's harder to get a job in this industry or that industry, whether you can find a job in biomedical engineering in outside of Cambridge if you want to work in Massachusetts, whatever it is, right? It's obviously to get advice and information because that's what we've been talking to. The stat that is always talked about is 85% of all jobs are gotten through networking. That's a scary statistic because that says if you're not networking, you're only able to get 15% of the jobs, right? That's that flip side. Now, I maintain that people are calling networking all sorts of things. So if you go to a career fair and you get your job through the career fair, might that be someone's definition of networking? Sure. We brought you people who could give you that good advice. They brought your resume into their team and got it. Or you got your internship through a career fair this year, and then you networked with someone you met on your internship to get your internship network next year. So which gets the credit, the career fair or networking? I think that they all roll up to that 85%, but you still don't want to make it so that you're only getting the 15%, right? That you only have that group. And then the other thing that's absolutely true is lots of jobs are never posted, or they're posted for the 5 days that they have to post legally within the company's rules. But you talk to an alum who sends you to their manager who thinks you'll be terrific. They tell the HR person, I really want to hire this Tufts person. And depending on the company's culture, they say, okay, we'll post for 5 days. And 5 days later, they just make you the offer. So it has been posted, but no one else got that opportunity, right? Not in a bad way, just but because it's true. Now, obviously, the Brian Flores situation sounds like that also might have happened there, where the job was already done, and then they pretended they were getting. That's not goodness. But we won't talk about that. We'll just say that many jobs aren't posted. So that's part of the reason you're talking to people. And it may be that it's just that you happen to impress a manager and they just say, well, why don't you come and work for me? Where they never thought about having an internship. And in small companies, they may never post any of their jobs, right? They just meet people and hire them. Okay. How to network. So we have a model we call the GEM model, and it's just so that you can remember what it is. But basically in networking, you always want to have a goal, because if you have a goal in anything in life, you're more likely to meet it. So the goal might be that you want to talk to everyone at the networking night that has a master's degree. Okay, that's one goal. The other goal could be to talk to everyone that's doing medical devices, right? Or to find someone who works for Takeda, right? It could be any of those, wide or granular or any other goal. I say that these two questions are things you can ask anyone you're networking with. I think that our office has been calling them the two golden questions for years. I just think they happen to be a way to think about two questions you can ask anyone that allow you to come in with decent questions, no matter who you're talking to, right? So the first one is, are there other people you think I should be talking to, right? That gets you more people to talk to, and it gets you a referral to those people. So that's a goodness. And then the other one is, if you were me, what would you be doing? Now, you could leave it at there, but it might be, what would you be doing to make sure I do something productive this summer? What would you be doing if you weren't sure whether you'd rather work in a pharmaceutical company or a medical device company, and then get their best answer about that? Whatever it is, you can actually make that question your own, but really it's a people question and a process question. I really love the second question because it might get completely different answers from absolutely everyone you ask. So if you were me, what would you be doing? I could tell you to read a book. I could tell you to go to an event. I could tell you to talk to a person. I could tell you to take a class. I could tell you to go join the Makers Club, any of that, right? But now you're just listening and you're getting as many people's advice, and then you get to pick and choose. You don't have to do anything that people advise, right? That is not what networking is. Networking doesn't mean you have to do it. Networking just means you've asked the question. And then usually here's where I talk about your elevator pitch, but that didn't seem like something you guys cared about, so I'm moving on. And then the last part of the model is, how will you be remembered? How will you stand out so that it's not just a conversation, but it might lead to a thing? So thank you notes, follow-up comes in there, but not just the thank you note, right? It's the thank you note that might be 3 thank you notes. It might be a thank you note right after you talk to me. And then when you use my advice, you might write me again. Hey, Robin, you told me to talk to Cinderella, and I had the best conversation with Cinderella. I want to thank you again. Now, aren't I likely to think of someone else for you to talk to? Absolutely, right? You're back on my mind. So that's goodness. And then, what did you tell me about? What are you talking about that people will remember? So if you're talking about, and this is more true in comp sci, but if everyone talks about the same project, you can't then say, I'm the person that talked to you about my project where I did a boggle game, right? What you want to do is make sure that in all those conversations, you notice what they like about you, or you notice something that makes you unique, so you can remind them who you were. And that way you can stick out and do that. Does this one's more complicated than the rest of the slides? Does this all make sense? Yeah? Okay. So I thought this was really funny when I found it. The opposite of networking is not working. And then it was quoted by somebody smart. I think that's funny. And then, don't be an ostrich with your head in the sand when it comes to networking. Go out there and do a thing. My new favorite thing is to say that, every year I come up with something new. I think last year or the year before it was peppy, but my new favorite, I have 2 new favorite things. One is never reject yourself. So apply for things that are interesting and don't be the one that rejects it. If they reject you, that's one thing. But also to remember that this is not a high stakes game. I mean, getting a job is what you want, but any given job, you don't have it now. So not getting it when you apply, you're exactly in the same place. And so I'm now telling students that, because I've noticed the students are like, oh, right. I hadn't really thought of that. I thought it was a really big deal if I didn't get that job I wanted. But really, it's just sort of disappointing. But you are literally not in a different place than you were right before you got that rejection, right? So ideally, I want you to get every job you apply to. We just know that that's not realistic. So we also then don't want it to make it to be part of your self-worth is that people are rejecting you. It really isn't that. They're not rejecting you, right? Remember, it's not personal. Same thing with networking. It's not personal if someone says, as long as you're peppy, it's not personal if someone doesn't have time or doesn't get back to you because they don't know you. So it can't be personal. It is really just a matter of what they have capacity for at the minute. Okay. If we think about practicing and preparing, we can generate a list through all these places. And then we do want you to practice anything you do with whatever tool you have to practice with. So if that's friends, family, or what have you, or if you go to big interview and practice there, you come see me and practice with me, all of those are good ways to practice. And then just because I have your ears, I actually believe that you should track your networking from the beginning. And also that this might be the second page of your spreadsheet. And by the way, do I care if you have a better way of doing this? No. I mean, if you don't want to do it in Excel and you want to do it, you know, make yourself a database, that's okay too. But you would like to know where you've applied and who you've networked with and maybe how they interact. So things that would be on there might be, you know, all the things, name, email, organization, how you found them, how you've interacted, the last date you did or all the dates you did, next steps you're planning on, and the notes. So in the notes section, this is networking instead of 101, it's networking 202. And that's if you write yourself good notes in the notes column that you will want to remember. So this person plays Frisbee, or this person is really into 3D printing, or this person was the first person to invent a false toe, whatever it is, right? And you put that in. Now, when you want to correspond with them in 6 months, a year, you go back to those notes and you get to say, I remember our conversation about this, or I remember you had talked about doing a marathon, or whatever it is. This makes it way easy to go back and have new correspondences. Is that the right word? With a person like that. Okay. So let me stop sharing for a second and see what it is whether there was anything I touched upon that you wish I would go over more. If there are things that I didn't touch upon that you want to ask questions, and then I'll just go to the, you know, I'll just take you to the internet and show you some stuff. What do you think? Is that what you were looking for?
Personally, yeah, I think, and I speak for everyone when we say, yeah, thank you very much for the slides, for the information. I had a quick question. Maybe, I don't know if we'll get to this later. I wanted to ask, like, the Career Center, does it have resources for like interview preparation, especially like behavioral? Technical can be different, you know, changing from field to field.
Absolutely. And then remember, you can do the behavioral ones on Big Interview. You can actually watch yourself do them. And then you can make mock interview appointments with me.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Okay. Anyone else? So let me share my screen again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you some stuff. Meg, you'll get this in the co-op class as well. But let's see. Let's start out at the Career Center, and you can't see this, can you? Because I didn't hit share. Okay, so this is the Career Center website. The HERD is right here. We talked about the HERD. That's the Flash mentoring website. The Career Communities Engineering is here. For you guys, I would look at the healthcare stuff as well, because why not, right? But under the engineering stuff, you get to the one more click down, and there are general resources here. And if you find new ones, I'm happy to add them to the page. Then there are more biomedical ones, but there are things that, you know, biomedical and mechanicals have that are similar. So you might look at those possibilities as well. So a lot of people just don't know this exists. So I wanted to show you that. The next thing that I want to show you is maybe LinkedIn. So of the 6 of you, are you all on LinkedIn? Okay, so make sure you fill out your profile. And this headline is really important. I do not have a great headline because I'm not looking for anything. So in my mind, I want people to know this is what I do for a living. But for you guys, saying you're a student at Tufts, which is what I see all the time, probably isn't helping you get jobs. So you might want to say biomedical engineer interested in X, or looking for an internship summer 2022 in X, Y, or Z. Now this is what comes up when a search is done. So they'll see that headline, and that might be useful. Okay, so that was not even what I was here for. Tufts University has a LinkedIn page, and my favorite button on the entire internet is the alumni button on the Tufts page. People always laugh at that, but it's not actually a joke. It's just true, because there are 76,000 alumni, including the students that are here, on this page. But you can search by people who have worked at a company. You could search by a title. You can search by people who have a certain degree. You can search by almost anything. So does anyone know exactly what they want? If I could spell prosthetics, I would do that. But say we did medical device. Right? What this allows you to see is that there are all these people that have medical devices in their profile somewhere. You can see their major in most cases, and it often, because everyone's headline doesn't exactly show what they are, often you can see what they're doing and where, right? What the second degree means is that their first degree connected with someone I'm first degree connected, right? So Joanna and I, who is a 2013 biomedical engineer, Joanna and I know 48 people that are similar. So if I wanted to get to Joanna, I would go to her, click on her head, and then I would go in here to see who they are and who I know well enough to ask a favor. So I'm looking at all these people, and Bertan would do almost anything I asked him. And he would say, for you, Robin, sure, I'd be glad to introduce you. So me asking Bertan to introduce me to Joanna means I don't even have to go and find her, send her a message out of the blue. I would just ask him to do the introduction. What I would do with that introduction is I would probably send a small email kind of thing that he could send along to her. But above that, his email would say, I worked with Robin a lot when I was at Tufts. It looks like you guys don't know each other, but she'd like to talk to you about X, Y, or Z. Would you be willing? When I introduce people in general, it means that if I'm willing to say, yes, I know that person well enough to introduce you, it's really, I don't know if it's ever happened where the person that I write to doesn't say yes to being introduced to someone I asked them to talk to, both students and non-students. Sometimes they ignore me for a little while and then say they're really sorry they ignored me. But generally, if I know someone well enough to think that I can ask, and that's going to be true with your network, if I know someone well enough to ask, then they're most likely going to say yes. The other networking trick is to join groups. So you can join a biomedical engineering group, you can join a prosthesis group, you can join a people who are interested in false toes group, whatever it is you're really interested in. But I will try to convince you, you should also join the Tufts University Career Network. The Tufts University Career Network is our largest LinkedIn group, and the 20,000 members, including you, so when you join, you will be saying yes, are saying, I'm happy to do what it is the group says it's here for, and that's to help people network, right? So anyone you connect with in this group has signed the pledge, there is no pledge, but basically has signed the pledge that they're going to be helpful. So do we remember how to spell Joanna? If you didn't have Joanna, and I think her name started with an X. Yep, there she is. So if you didn't know 48 people that knew Joanna, but you're a member of this group, you can message her directly. And your message gets to start with the same thing every time. Thank you so much for being part of the Tufts University Career Network, because that reminds them that they already said that they wanted to be helpful. And now you can write them a note. The difference between connecting to someone on LinkedIn, which you can do anytime you want, and always write a note, always write a real note when you're doing that. So if you're not connected to me, make sure you write me a real note. When you click connect, it will say send note. It actually doesn't have a question mark. I wish it did. It just says send note. Click on the send note and then write me a little note. I don't care what it says. But that's to remind you that anytime you're talking to a professional, that I've done the air quotes a lot today. Sorry about that. Anytime you want to connect with someone that you really don't know, then sending a little note about why you want to connect is just the professional, the peppy thing to do. When you connect with someone through a LinkedIn group, whether it's a Tufts group or any other group, you can write a whole message, and that message can be much longer. The connection note has a character limited number. Maybe it's 100 characters. Might be even fewer. In the writing an actual message note, you're allowed to write a regular message. The other thing it doesn't do is it isn't asking them to open their whole network to you. It's just like an email. So I think this becomes a really easy way to network, because you know it's permissioned. They joined the group and said they're happy to help. And it allows you to write more, which allows you to tell them why you picked them out of the hat and what you're hoping to get out of any conversation. Make sense? Okay, what else did I say I would send you here? I'm going to stop sharing just because I don't like when you're all so little. What else did we want to cover? So networking night is coming up. Networking can be easy. The 3 easy ways are the herd, using your LinkedIn people to introduce you to their contacts, and LinkedIn groups. And then networking night, because it's coming up in 2 weeks. And Meg, you cannot come to the class if you want to not come to the class.
It's a great example with Joanna, actually. She was just part of an alumni panel we hosted last semester.
That is funny, but obviously by being member of the alumni group, it's clear that those people really are trying to be helpful. It's actually a good way to find panelists, because you know that they are interested in helping out, or at least they were at some point in their career, right? Because you very rarely take yourself out of a thing. You have a tendency to put yourself in things. So what didn't we cover that we meant to cover? And obviously with a group of 6, there's fewer questions, and so I won't make you stay with me if you don't have questions. We can call it an afternoon, but I'm happy to answer anything you want.
I was a bit interested in how you would recommend preparing for interviews, especially more academic interviews rather than industry interviews.
Okay, so remember that on our website, we do have a whole thing on grad school. So if you haven't checked that out, please do. I don't think of, interview prep. When I think about it, it's why do you want it's know yourself, know your best stories, and know why you want it. So I don't think they're so completely different, but now instead of concentrating on the skills you have that would make you good at the job, it's the skills you have that would make you good at the academics, and then the personality pieces are that they would want to have you in the lab, in the group, in the whatever you're joining in that academic thing. So when you're applying to a program and you know the program is very much based on team stuff, then you're going to focus on having good team examples. If, on the other hand, the program you're going to is really a research group, now that would be where I would focus, is that you're a good team member, but you're a really good researcher, right? So I think it's not so different in terms of my feeling about it. Your prep will be similar, and that's knowing what they want. Now you're prepping to that. Does that make sense? You will not necessarily tell the same stories and have the same answers, but you will have prepped similarly because you know what they're going to ask. Yeah, Meg will go into much more about the fact that you can sort of guess what the kinds of interview questions are going to be, so you can prep for the ones you think are going to come up, and then you're more likely to be ready for those questions once you figure that out. What else?
I want to talk about something. It's not necessarily a question. You mentioned the mass life sciences, and I remember in 2020, I had an internship that was canceled due to COVID. And then I talked to one of my professors. She suggested that I apply for the mass life challenge, the internship challenge. And when the application is approved, you keep getting like, emails from companies. It's on a rolling basis. So like even now I still get emails from them. They're like, we'd like to interview you. Like, how do you like, would you like to like have a conversation about this role and stuff? I feel like it's a very great resource. And like, I would gladly like recommend it to anybody to try it. They have different programs. I think there is the internship challenge, the data science program, and the other one might be like a high school apprenticeship or something.
Right.
So
I think that's
yeah.
true. And then there is also one, if you, I mean, biomedical engineers don't always want to do things in the clean energy space, but there's a clean energy one as well. Very simple. It's called the Mass CEC.
Yeah, it's a great, you just send in your resume. If it's approved the application, you just keep getting like job offers, interviews.
Well,
and
at
all
least you
that.
do when
It's
you're
great.
as good as you are.
Yeah, that's great. Mhm.
Are there any other resources that I didn't talk about that you have found useful that we have that you want to tell the rest of the group? Because
Mostly,
go ahead.
sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say I usually use Handshake. On LinkedIn also there's a way you can sign up for like daily job updates. Like you put in the fields that you're interested in, and I think it's every day or like every other day. It's like very frequent. So they send you like open positions.
Yeah,
And then
so
you can
some
check them
people
out.
find that hard to deal with because it's too much. So you have to decide your own appetite for how many emails you're getting in a day. But yeah, I think that's a great idea. This is true for any of you. If there are resources you come across that aren't on our website that you think would be helpful to people, because not everyone joins the BME Society and not everyone comes to our website, but we may as well be making sure that people can find what they want in all places. So if there are resources that I haven't put up there, clearly there's probably a list that's way longer than what I have. Let's just keep it growing.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, anything else that was more specific to people's person? I mean, how was that for a ridiculous question? Any more specific questions you have, and they can be just something that you would like to know rather than the group has to benefit from. But oh, there's something in the chat that I did not notice. So this is an interesting question. So it's what kinds of notes should I take when looking at job descriptions? Depends on what you're using them for. The notes you want to take when you're looking at a job description are if you're going to write a cover letter, because if you've decided you're going to write you're going to actually apply for the job, then you're looking for the qualifications and skills that you need and may have, because that's how you write your cover letter. If it's for sort of getting to the point where you can figure out what classes to take in the future or those kind of things, then still the skills that you're trying to build and the qualifications, qualities, so some of the qualities might be non-technical, some of the qualifications might be technical, and the transferable skills might be either. I would have a running list of those things and where you think you have them. So it's a great thing to be reading job descriptions and keeping that running list. So you, and maybe, you know, a bunch of titles as well, but you'll start to find generalities that, you know, everyone hiring a process engineer is going to look for at least these three, and the difference might be the industry you're in, whatever that looks like. So absolutely, just knowing that you want to take notes makes me happy. What else?
I mean,
Also,
sorry, this is very specific, but I have an interview in 90 minutes. So any last minute like advice that I can, I've done like the prepare the questions and practice, but like, I don't know, any.
So you remember how to answer behavioral interviews, right? With the STAR method: situation,
Yep.
task, action, result. Take it back to them. I actually teach START. Remember to smile.
Okay.
Remember to ask to think, because then I know why you're looking away, right?
Mm-hmm.
Make it as much of a conversation as you know how to make it. So when you're finished with an answer, rather than just stopping in the middle. I talked to someone today who literally every time she finished, I was expecting more, and I was like waiting. So there was this blank amount of time. But you can end a question with, does that make sense? Like I do all the time. Or did you want me to say more about that? Do you want me to go into more detail? That kind of thing. If you can ask questions at the end of a statement, then they're talking as well. And that allows you to get them talking. So people generally feel an interview's gone well if it's a conversation.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know something, tell them you don't know, that's okay. But you can always say, I don't know that exact thing, but I think it's like this thing, and then answer that question. So remember, you're in control. You get to control your answer. They get to control their questions, but you get to control your answers. Stay positive. The more positively you can answer something, the more they hear it positively. So they may ask you about your experience with whatever the machine is, and you've never used it. Instead of saying, I've never used that, I have no idea, it's rather, I would look forward to learning that machine. I learned quickly, right? So just thinking about those things. I can send you all. I'm not sure, I never know how to put my interview prep thing. Well, maybe I can just cut and paste it and put the whole thing in the chat, right? Hang on, let me do that for you. Can I? Let me see if I can do it. So that didn't work very well. Let me see if I can figure out what would work well. So my interview prep is here. So I will cut and paste this whole thing in here and put it in the chat. Let's do to everyone. And hey, why didn't it cut and paste? Try one more time, sorry. Because it would be good for you to have it.
If you prefer, you can also email it to either me or Eve, and we can
Well, I
distribute it to the
can
club.
definitely do that, but it won't come in time for Meg to do
True,
her
90
interview.
minutes.
So I thought maybe I could do it by cutting and pasting the whole thing. but let's see if it works now. If this doesn't work, I'll have to send it to you all. I'll send it. It didn't cut and paste. That's odd that it doesn't do that. All right, so I'll send it to you. Sorry. Okay, what else? Anything? I'm looking at the time and my appointment is at 3, so probably one more question. Is this what you wanted?
This was fantastic. Thank you, Robin.
I was only sort of fishing. I really wasn't. I just don't like when I do a whole thing and then people say, yeah, but what we really wanted from you is this.
No, we would have stopped you partway through. But thank you very much. And
Okay, so I will send you, who am I sending it to? I can send you the slides so you can send it. Oh, you recorded it, so I don't even need to send you the slides.
Yep.
And then I can send you the prepare for interview thing, and Meg, I can send that right to you just right now.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay.
Just on the Career Center website?
Not this little thing. There's plenty there. But my little signature, when people write me the day before or 90 minutes before their interview and say, how do I prep? Then I just send out that email. So I will send it both to Miles and to you right now.
Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us. And
No problem.
hope you have a good next meeting and a good weekend.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.